Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. It was hard to tell how long Roxanne and Lucian stayed in the living room before her phone rang. It was from Lisa. Roxanne answered the call. "Have you returned, Ms. Jarvis? If not, we can go and pick you up." Lisa's voice entered her ears the moment the call connected. Roxanne replied plainly, "I'm already back home. You should bring the children straight back here." It was then Lisa sounded rather troubled. Also, Mr. Farwell's assistant is saying that he wants to go home with us." When she went to pick up Archie and Benny, Estella was still there. The boys insisted they would only leave after she left, so Lisa had no choice but to wait with them. At the end, when Caden arrived, he said he wanted to come home with Lisa. She couldn't make the decision, so she called Roxanne. Roxanne glanced at Lucian subconsciously when she heard that. He was acting as though he didn't hear anything. His eyes remained fixed on his phone without any expression. Seeing that, she hesitated for a few seconds before replying, "I understand. Let him come back with you all." A sigh of relief escaped Lisa's mouth when she obtained permission from her employer. She agreed and hung up the phone. Thinking about how she had to face her children later, Roxanne took in a deep breath in order to calm down. After a while, the gate was opened from the outside. The children's laughter entered her ears. It was apparent the children were happy they were able to come back together. Roxanne was about to pick them up out of habit. Lucian had been keeping his eye on her, so the moment he detected her intentions, he put his phone away and stopped her. "Don't move. Your wound has just been bandaged." She halted as she watched him head to the entrance. "Daddy." Estella was overjoyed when she saw her father was there and hugged his leg excitedly. He patted her head and grabbed the children's bags from Lisa's hand. Then he watched them change their shoes before taking them inside to wash their hands. During the process, the boys were a little confused. They remembered their mother didn't like their father coming over, yet there he was. Additionally, their mother didn't seem to want their father to leave. "And Ms. Jarvis?" Estella ran straight to Roxanne after she finished washing her hands. There were a lot of complicated feelings swirling in Roxanne's heart at that moment, yet she still forced herself to smile and hug her daughter. Estella stared at Roxanne's injured leg panickedly. "Is your leg feeling better?" Roxanne smiled at the girl comfortingly. "Yes, it is. Thank you for caring about me, Essie." That didn't put the girl's worry at ease. She got off the couch and carefully touched the fresh bandage on her leg. Roxanne just smiled and let the girl do whatever she wanted. As for the boys, they were sitting at the side quietly. Occasionally they would glance at their father with caution. Suddenly the children saw the blood-stained gauze on the ground. It would appear neither Lucian nor Roxanne had the time to throw the gauze away before the children returned. Then they turned to the new gauze on their mother's injury. Their eyebrows furrowed as they stared at Roxanne. "Did your wound open up, Mommy?" Roxanne's heart tightened when she heard that. She subconsciously glanced at Estella. The girl's face crumpled. She stared at her with a worried pout. Roxanne felt her heart ached when she saw that. With a pat on Estella's head, she said, "I went out today and accidentally tore my wound open. I'm fine now." Estella's eyes were already turning red. "Does it hurt?" The woman's heart softened. "Not at all. I don't feel a thing." Then she glanced at Lucian and changed the subject to be about him. "Besides, your daddy was very careful when he bandaged my wound. You can ask him whether my injury is severe or not." Estella's attention was swiftly shifted to her father as she sought his answer. Lucian couldn't help but raise his eyebrow when Roxanne mentioned him. Still, he nodded at the child. as she'll recover quickly if she gets the rest she needs. Everything he said, the girl believed what he said without any question. She sniffed and nodded obediently. Roxanne initially wanted to ask Lucian to take Estella home after letting Estella know she was fine. However, seeing Estella like that made it hard for her to chase the girl away. Due to Roxanne's injury, the boys didn't play around as they did before. Instead, they just sat next to her quietly. After a while, Lisa finished preparing their meal and called for them. "The meal is ready. Come and eat." Upon hearing that, Roxanne subconsciously glanced at Lucian. She was about to say he shouldn't stay for the meal, but then she heard the boys say, "Mommy, can Essie eat with us?" The boys saw how happy the girl was on the way back, and so they hoped she would get to spend more time with their mother. Roxanne's eyebrows furrowed slightly when she heard that. She appeared troubled because she had just seen Aubrey calling Lucian. "If I let Lucian and Essie stay here for a meal, it'll look like I'm doing it on purpose, especially after what he said." Her intention was to reject her boy's request, but Estella grabbed her sleeve. It caused her heart to waver as her gaze shifted to the girl. Estella stared at her pitifully. The red in her eyes hadn't completely subsided yet, which made her look aggrieved. As Roxanne stared into the girl's eyes, she hesitated, and in the end, she couldn't reject her. Seeing how she wasn't getting an answer, Estella turned to her father with red cheeks for help. "Daddy." Lucian glanced at Roxanne and lowered his eyes to look at his daughter. "Miss Jarvis has already agreed. You should thank her." Doubt was still present in Estella's heart, so she wanted to hear the confirmation right out of Roxanne's mouth. However, Roxanne couldn't bring herself to say it. She simply patted the child's head in silent agreement. Then, with her focus shifted to her sons, she said, "Take her to the dining room." The boys understood that it meant their mother agreed to their request. They nodded obediently and guided Estella. "Come with us, Essie." It was only then that Estella believed what she wanted was happening. Still, she glanced at Roxanne's leg with worry and insisted on staying by her side to help her walk. Sensing the girl's intentions, Roxanne smiled warmly. She wanted to ask Lisa for help when Lucian's tall figure appeared by her side. "Essie, you should go with Archie and Benny first. I'll take Miss Jarvis to the dining room." Lucian's voice rang out. Naturally, Estella believed her father, so she followed the boys into the dining room, leaving only the adults in the living room. Hesitation filled Roxanne's eyes as she stared at Lucian. His eyebrows furrowed as he stretched his hand toward her. "I'll help you walk." She glanced at the children in the dining room, who were all staring at the two of them with wide eyes. When she recalled the phone call he had gotten earlier, she rejected his help. "You should keep the children's company first, Mr. Farwell. I can ask Lisa for help." Displeasure flashed across Lucian's eyes when he heard that. His tone grew colder. "Do you think it's inconvenient for me to hold you, Miss Jarvis?" "I'm thinking the same thing, so I'll just carry you there." He immediately leaned down toward her. It was beyond her expectation that he would threaten her that way, so she quickly stretched her hand out. "Thank you for your help then, Mr. Farwell." Lucian stopped his movements for a few seconds, which made her anxious. After a while, he stood up again and grabbed the arm she stretched out. Borrowing his strength, she stood up from the couch. In the next second, he pulled her into his embrace. Roxanne froze upon noticing how intimate they were getting. She wanted to push him away, but she couldn't muster the strength to do so. Additionally, he was holding her pretty tightly, which didn't give her any space to struggle. She was escorted to the dining table with his help as the children looked on. Roxanne smiled at the children. "See? I'm doing fine." The children naturally saw her crippled leg as she walked. It only made their hearts ache when they heard that. However, it was obvious Roxanne didn't want them to worry. Thus the children didn't ask any further questions and silently put some food on her plate. She thanked them with a smile. Miss Jarvis. Estella suddenly spoke. Roxanne turned to the girl, confused. Can you rest properly and get better soon? The look in the girl's stare was serious. When she heard Roxanne's wound open because of all the walking, she wanted Roxanne to rest and get better soon. Upon hearing that, Roxanne was stunned for a few seconds. Then she nodded at the child, unsure if she should laugh or cry. I know. Don't worry, Essie. I'll listen to your advice. Estella nodded seriously like a small adult. Following that, the boys' attention shifted to Lucian as they spoke. Thank you for applying Mommy's medicine for her, Mr. Farewell. They proceeded to put food on Lucian's plate. He didn't expect they would thank him. With his eyebrow raised, he smiled at them indifferently. You two need to take good care of your mother and try not to let her walk, the children nodded. They all had an enjoyable time with the meal. After dinner was over, Lucian didn't force Roxanne any further and quickly left with Estella. Mommy. It wasn't until the two of them left that the boys approached her and looked at her carefully. Roxanne met their eyes with confusion. What's wrong? Can Essie and Mr. Farwell visit our place again? Their voice was small. They might not like the fact that their father abandoned their mother, but after 2 days of interaction, they began to feel it was better to have him around. After all, he always knew how to take care of their mother. When she heard them asking that abruptly, a strange feeling surfaced in her heart. Do you boys like Mr. Farwell? Archie and Benny exchanged a glance. They were suddenly afraid to answer their mother's question. It wasn't Lucian that they liked. They just liked having a father around to take care of their mother. However, they could see that their mother still didn't like their father. When they thought of that, they hesitated. A sense of worry began to surface in Roxanne's heart. She could see the change in their attitude toward Lucian. If things continued down that trajectory and they found themselves liking Lucian and wanting to interact with him more, she wouldn't be able to find a reason to say no. After all, they should grow up by Lucian's side. It was her decision to take away their right to live with their father. Upon returning to her senses, she abruptly stared at the boys apologetically. I don't know. However, if you two want that, I won't say no. In other words, she wouldn't invite Lucian voluntarily and she wouldn't be happy if he visited, but she would still allow it as a way to make up for her children. The boys were smart, so they instantly knew what she meant. She still didn't like their father visiting. We just feel pitiful for Essie. Benny and Archie were quietly cutting their ties with Lucian. Roxanne let out a sigh of relief when she heard that. However, it also caused her to feel apologetic when Estella's name was mentioned. I pity her too, but... Her mind became blank and she didn't know what to say. Thankfully, the boys didn't question her further and simply changed the topic. There is no need to feel sad, Mommy. We'll take good care of Essie. You just need to take care of yourself, Mommy. It sounded as though Roxanne was the child in the scenario. Warmth filled her heart as she patted the boys' heads with a smile. Thank you, darlings. They kept her company for a bit longer before heading upstairs obediently. Lisa helped Roxanne enter her room. After Roxanne cleaned herself, she lay down on the bed but couldn't sleep. She had no idea what Lucian was thinking. He had already gotten together with Aubrey, just like how he wanted it. And I made it clear that I'm not going to cling to him as I did 6 years ago. But now it feels as though our position has switched. He'll always show up in front of me. Technically, there's no longer any relationship between us. As I have said before, we should be nothing but strangers to each other. And yet, the things he did keep making me feel as if he wanted to maintain a close relationship with me and the children. It was then she realized something and halted her train of thought. At the same time, she felt she was being silly. No one knew why I left 6 years ago better than I did. It was because I realized what position Aubrey held in Lucian's heart. I knew no matter how hard I tried, he would never look at me. After 6 years, Aubrey is still by Lucian's side. It's clear both of them still love each other. I don't understand why Lucian harbors that kind of thought toward me when he's still in love with Aubrey. When her thoughts ended there, she bit her lip self-deprecatingly. In the end, I'm just deluding myself. The only reason Lucian is taking care of me is because of Essie. She silently tried to convince herself not to overthink things. As long as I keep my distance from Lucian, problems won't arise anymore. Lucian had arrived at the Farwell residence with Estella. Since it was getting late, he sent her to her bed to sleep. "Daddy," she said just as he stood and was about to leave. Lucian halted his movements, turned around, and sat next to Estella's bed again. "Oh, what's wrong?" It was obvious she was already sleepy, but she still suppressed her drowsiness and looked at her father. "Does Ms. Jarvis like us?" After all, when she went to visit Roxanne with her father, not only did Roxanne not chase them away, but she also didn't intentionally give him the cold shoulders. Lucian's eyes darkened when he heard that question. He began to recall how distant Roxanne treated him before the children arrived. "When will we meet Ms. Jarvis again?" Excitement filled Estella's voice. He remained silent for a second before patting his daughter's head. "I've been busy with my work lately. Once I am freer, I'll take you to meet her." It was pretty clear Roxanne was still avoiding him, but the misunderstanding had taken root in his daughter's mind, so he didn't want her to be disappointed again. The girl really thought Roxanne had accepted her and her father. Thus she nodded obediently upon hearing that. Lucian forced a smile. "You should rest early. I'll be heading out now." "Okay," the girl agreed. It wasn't until she was deep in her sleep that he left the room. Just thinking about the question she posed earlier made his head hurt. During that period, he used almost every trick in the book in order to close the gap between him and Roxanne, but to no avail. The only thing he could celebrate was that he managed to keep her in the country. He could tell by their interaction during the night that she was still avoiding him. It was as though Roxanne's questioning that night still rang in his ear. Of course, Lucian asked himself that question before. He wondered why he didn't appreciate her from 6 years ago when she was all in love with him. It's too late to regret it now. His fingers pinched between his eyebrows with annoyance. "What can I do to improve our relationship?" It was a long while before he stepped away from Estella's bedroom entrance. Instead of returning to the room, he went downstairs. "Where are you going so late at night, Mr. Farwell?" Catalina was doing some chores downstairs. Confusion rose in her mind when she saw him descending the stairs. Lucian replied, "Take care of Essie." She agreed and watched her employer exit the living room with an awful expression. The scene confused her as she watched him leave. "The last time I saw him like this was when Mrs. Farwell left. What's going on with him this time?" Upon exiting the mansion, Lucian went into his car and called Jonathan. Jonathan had already taken a bath and was getting ready to go to bed when suddenly he received his friend's call. Thus he crawled up from his bed and answered, "What's the matter?" "Why are you calling me so late at night, Lucian?" "Come and drink with me." Lucian's reply was short and simple. A conflict brewed in Jonathan's mind when he heard that. "I'm going to sleep soon. How about another day?" However, it was as though Lucian didn't hear him at all. "I'll wait for you at our usual spot." Then the call ended. The moment Jonathan heard that, he got off the bed unwillingly. "Oh no." Half an hour later, Jonathan arrived at the clubhouse wearing only pajamas with a long trench coat over it. Fortunately, he was a regular at the clubhouse, so he was recognized as soon as he arrived. Otherwise, he would definitely be refused entry wearing this outfit. When he arrived at the private room that Lucian booked, Jonathan spotted the latter already seated inside. There were only a few plates of simple appetizers on the table, and the remaining space was filled with bottles of liquor. One of the bottles was almost empty. "What's the matter?" Jonathan's heart sank as he sat down gingerly beside Lucian. Lucian seemed to have only just noticed Jonathan and turned his head to look at the latter, his eyes dark. "I did as you told me to." When Jonathan heard that, he frowned because he was unsure of what that meant. "He did as I told him to? What did I tell him? What disaster has happened to put him in this state?" As Jonathan pondered, he poured himself a glass of liquor and drank alongside Lucian. After he downed the glass, a speculation came to his mind. "It's Dr. Jarvis, isn't it?" Still holding the glass, Jonathan looked at his companion hesitantly. Other than Roxanne, there was no one he could think of who could bring Lucian out of the house at this time of the night to drink. The moment he said that, he felt as if the room temperature dropped a few degrees. Silently, Jonathan wrapped his trench coat tighter around himself, and he believed he already had the answer. Still, he waited for Lucian to speak up. It seemed like an eternity before he heard Lucian speak up. "What have I done wrong? I did make a mistake 6 years ago, but after she came back, I have not done anything wrong. Why does she distance herself from me now?" Jonathan was disturbed by his questions. "Are you and Dr. Jarvis having problems again? Didn't you both go on a vacation together just a couple of days ago?" Frowning, Lucian placed the glass back on the table, which produced a sound. Jonathan's heart skipped a beat as he wondered what had gone wrong between them. How did Lucian end up broken like this? After a moment, Lucian's voice rang out as cold as ice. "It would have been better if there was no vacation." Lucian was the one who had planned the vacation. He had even swapped the winner of the first prize at the last minute. In retrospect, the effort should not have been spent. If the turning point of their relationship had remained as it was at the end of the stage play, perhaps Roxanne would not be rejecting him as she was currently doing so. Even until now, he had not figured out what went wrong during their vacation. Jonathan listened in bewilderment. "What do you mean? Weren't you happy during the vacation? Didn't you listen to my advice to let her have her way? By right, to warm up the relationship, the vacation was the opportunity to patch things up, and nothing could go wrong." As Lucian frowned and recalled the experiences during the vacation, he felt even more upset. He did more than just let her have her way. In fact, he had all but done everything and anything as she wished. Even Archie and Benny's attitude toward him had improved. Sometime during the vacation, he had felt that things were improving between them, but unexpectedly, just before it ended, there was a sudden change in her temperament. At this point, Lucian's expression turned cold as ice. Watching Lucian's face, Jonathan could more or less guess what was on his mind, and he became increasingly bewildered. "How could that be? If you had done as I said, Dr. Jarvis' attitude toward you should change for the better." Since Roxanne's return up until now, they had been interacting more than Jonathan knew. As far as Jonathan was aware of, Lucian had been helping Roxanne almost all the time. Even the opportunity to cooperate with the Damaris family was Lucian's doing in disguise. No matter how deep the misunderstanding between the two of them was 6 years ago, after all that Lucian did, at least Roxanne should be grateful, even if she did not plan to reconcile. Moreover, Lucian had created so many opportunities for them to spend considerably quality time together. As far as he knew, Roxanne was not a heartless person, so what was the reason she was unmoved? Lucian frowned deeply, his expression as dark as thunder. Jonathan's misgivings were the same questions that he too had concerning Roxanne. Previously, when he thought Roxanne had abandoned Estella for a time, he had the impression that she was a cruel person. Now, though the misunderstanding was resolved, Roxanne still alienated herself from him. Once again, the question of whether Roxanne was really cruel occurred to Lucian. If Dr. Jarvis was really unmoved, how did you spend the vacation? Did each of you just go separate ways? Jonathan could not help but feel curious. Lucian shook his head. I really can't fathom what goes on in that head of hers. Before the vacation ended, I honestly felt that she was being friendly with me. Jonathan nodded as he could understand what the other man meant. Does that mean your relationship had its ups and downs, but there were also moments of tenderness? At that, Lucian nodded indifferently. Jonathan could feel an incoming headache. Their relationship seems really incomprehensible. He thought Roxanne was always cold toward Lucian. It was truly unexpected that there were moments of closeness between the two of them. If so, how did they drift apart after periods of closeness? Jonathan looked at Lucian in confusion. He wanted to give up trying to understand what was going on. If Lucian himself cannot understand what is going on, how am I supposed to comprehend their relationship? Then again, Lucian, you and Dr. Jarvis. What do you want her to be? Naturally, Jonathan did not want to see Lucian go on suffering. After much thought, he decided that he must help the latter out. Hearing that, Lucian frowned without giving an immediate reply. Do you want to reconcile with her? Jonathan questioned again. Perhaps you want to marry her again? After all, Roxanne was Estella's biological mother and the little girl was fond of the woman. Even Jonathan himself was of the opinion that Roxanne was the right woman for Lucian. Lucian turned to look at him without admitting nor denying what he had suggested. Presumably silence was acquiescence. Seeing Lucian's response, Jonathan made the decision to persuade him. Well then, I think you can directly discuss your thoughts with Dr. Jarvis. After all, according to what you said, her attitude toward you is sometimes warm. Perhaps, just as you don't understand her, she's guessing what is on your mind. Jonathan looked at Lucian's expression as he spoke. If this goes on, and your relationship goes up and down, then after a long time it might not turn out how you want it to. You will more likely end up as enemies. That is not what you want to happen, is it? Lucian frowned a little, looking tired. Then what do you think? How should I explain it to her? During that period of time, Lucian had spent a lot of effort trying to improve his relationship with Roxanne. Moreover, as Estella had been asking him for updates on their status, he had no choice but to keep thinking of different ways to make things better. However, although he had done everything he could, he did not seem to be making any progress. Lucian was starting to feel tired. Even though Jonathan wasn't sure if his method would work, he did not want Lucian and Roxanne to continue being in a stalemate. As such, he gritted his teeth and suggested, why don't you just pursue her? It's better than the two of you guessing each other's thoughts. Isn't that exhausting? I think it's better for you to tell her your feelings directly. Lucian looked at his friend with his brows furrowed and gestured for him to continue. Although he did not want to admit it, what Jonathan mentioned was indeed the crux of the problem. Neither Lucian nor Roxanne knew what each other was thinking. Besides, Roxanne was also not willing to trust the man's intentions. Since you've already done so much for her, you don't have anything to lose by telling her your feelings outright. Noticing that Lucian was listening to him attentively, Jonathan started speaking more enthusiastically. If it's possible, I think you should just ask her directly if she wants to return to your side. You should also give her a proper apology. As Lucian had never pursued anyone before, he could not think of a way to execute it, although he understood what Jonathan was saying. There was no way he would appear in front of Roxanne abruptly and tell her all those things out of nowhere. Given the woman's character, she would definitely find him ridiculous and might even distance herself from him even more. At that thought, Lucian asked patiently, "What exactly should I do?" Jonathan did not expect the man to ask such a dumb question. In fact, he had never imagined that one day he would be teaching his friend how to chase a woman. In the first place, given Lucian's status, it was already mind-boggling that he had to pursue a woman actively. Jonathan could hardly believe that his friend, who looked so perfect that he seemed ethereal, was currently asking him how to pursue someone so seriously. Sensing Jonathan's thoughts, Lucian frowned and kicked the man's calf. Jonathan snapped out of his thoughts at once and smiled nonchalantly before coming out with more suggestions. Why don't you buy her flowers? According to my experience, there isn't any woman who wouldn't be happy to receive flowers. You should also attach a card with the flowers and write her a sweet note. I'm sure that would work." The man felt a pang of guilt after saying that. Truthfully, given his status and family background, in addition to his good looks, Jonathan did not have any actual experience pursuing women as well. However, he had seen people doing that in dramas. Moreover, Frida had also been receiving flowers from her various admirers, and she always seemed delighted to receive them. Hence, Jonathan was rather confident that it was a good idea. As Lucian was completely clueless about how to chase a woman, he intended to simply follow Jonathan's advice. When he heard Jonathan suggesting getting flowers, Lucian pondered over it for a while with a crease between his brows before nodding in agreement. "I'll try that." Jonathan raised his wineglass and proposed a toast to his friend. "All the best. I hope you and Dr. Jarvis would successfully get back together." This is also to congratulate Essie for reuniting with Dr. Jarvis in advance. Lucian clinked glasses with Jonathan. Although the two friends had met up to drink, they ended up not drinking much. Besides, Jonathan was so tired that he could not stop yawning in the private room. As Lucian's problems were resolved, he did not force Jonathan to stay with him. As such, the two of them called it a night early and went home separately. After Lucian returned to the mansion, he took out his phone and rang Caden. Caden had just gone to bed when he received his boss call. He got up at once and answered, "Mr. Farwell, is there anything you need?" After a few moments of silence, Lucian finally spoke. "Find out the best florists in town and send me their contact details." Caden was suddenly wide awake upon hearing what his boss said. "Are Myers playing tricks on me? Did Mr. Farwell just ask me to search for florists? Is he really intending to do that?" Caden had forgotten to reply to Lucian as he was still in a state of shock. As all Lucian heard was silence on the other end of the line, he frowned and asked, "Can you hear me?" Snapping back to his senses at once, Caden answered, "Yes, Mr. Farwell. Please give me a while. I'll find out right away." Lucian merely hummed a reply before ending the call. His original intention was to get Caden to purchase the flowers on his behalf. However, he decided to do it personally in the end, taking into consideration the significance of the act. A few minutes later, Lucian received a text from his assistant with the websites and contact details of two florists. Clicking open the links, Lucian browsed through the information of both shops before deciding on one. The next morning, Lucian headed to the florist after sending Estella to kindergarten slightly earlier than usual. "Hi, are you looking for flowers?" the shop assistant asked when she noticed the man standing outside the store. Lucian nodded slightly. The crease between his brows deepened as he looked at the offerings in the florist. It was his first time buying flowers for someone, and he had no idea what to get. Instantly, the shop assistant noticed the man's confusion and stepped forward to assist him. "Different flowers have different meanings. Are you buying flowers for your girlfriend?" "Girlfriend?" Lucian's expression darkened when he heard that word. After a short pause, he nodded briefly. Seeing his response, the shop assistant could not help but feel envious. I wonder who the lucky woman who has such a handsome boyfriend is. He's also such a sweet man to be choosing flowers for her personally. If it's for your girlfriend, I would recommend red roses. We have a few ready-made bouquets inside the shop. Please feel free to come in and take a look, the shop assistant suggested enthusiastically, putting aside her envy. Hearing that, the man nodded and followed the woman into the shop. The moment he stepped inside, he was greeted with the fragrance of fresh flowers. The shop assistant picked up a bouquet of flowers that was on display and showed it to Lucian. This is the most popular bouquet in our shop among couples. You might want to consider getting it. Looking at the bouquet for a while, he decided to go with the shop assistant's suggestion as he had completely no idea what women liked. The shop assistant was enthusiastic when she recommended it to him anyway. After a brief moment of contemplation, he nodded and instructed, "I'll get this one then. Do you want to attach a card to it? If so, would you like to have any message written on the card?" the shop assistant asked. That was when Lucian recalled his conversation with Jonathan the day before. Jonathan had also told him that he should write a message together with the flowers. As for what he should write on the card, Lucian furrowed his brows and pondered over it for a moment before asking in a deep voice, "Can you pass me the card? I want to write the message myself." The shop assistant agreed immediately and passed him a card and a pen. With a crease between his brows, Lucian ruminated for a while before he picked up the pen and started writing. After he was done, he folded the card and passed it back to the shop assistant. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" the woman asked. Shaking his head, Lucian left after providing the delivery address. He had followed Jonathan's suggestion and wrote his heartfelt feelings on the card, and he wondered how Roxanne would react when she read his message. Unable to contain her curiosity, the shop assistant took a peek at the card after Lucian left the florist. She was baffled when she saw the man's angular handwriting on the card. It was the first time she had seen someone leaving such a vague note with a bouquet of roses. Later that morning, when Lisa returned home after sending the two boys to kindergarten, she spotted a man outside the door with a bouquet of roses in his hand who was just about to press the doorbell, rendering her feeling slightly perplexed. She had met quite a few of Roxanne's male friends before, but none of them had delivered flowers to her personally. "Hi, may I know who you are?" Lisa asked, approaching the man with a puzzled look on her face. That man was sent by the florist to deliver the flowers to Roxanne. He had reached a while back and tried pressing the doorbell a few times, but no one answered. Just when he was intending to leave and return later in the afternoon, he saw Lisa. When he met the housekeeper's scrutinizing gaze, he explained, "Hi, I'm the delivery man from the florist. A gentleman had bought flowers from our store this morning and told us to deliver to this address." Upon hearing that, Lisa nodded slightly and took over the bouquet from the man. "Oh, thank you. I'll pass it to the recipient." The woman entered the mansion after sending the delivery man off. Meanwhile, Roxanne was walking toward the door with great difficulty when she saw Lisa entering the house carrying a bouquet of flowers. "What's this?" she asked, feeling rather stunned. She had difficulty falling asleep the night before as her mind was in a mess. As such, she was not able to wake up early that morning. If she had not heard the doorbell ringing, she might not even have woken up now. However, the doorbell stopped ringing after she had finally reached the door. Judging by the situation, the woman guessed that it was a delivery man from the florist, and Lisa had bumped into him outside. "Miss Jarvis, why did you come out? Your wound has previously split open, and you need to rest in order for it to heal." Lisa put the flowers down and rushed toward Roxanne, helping the latter to sit down on the couch. Roxanne fixed her gaze on the red roses, and a crease appeared between her brows. She did not understand what was going on. She had no idea who would buy her flowers, red roses at that. I met the delivery man outside our house just now. He told me that the sender was a gentleman. He had sent it to the right address. It should be for you, Lisa explained upon noticing Roxanne's perplexed expression. Even so, Roxanne was still confused. When Lisa saw the look on the woman's face, she started feeling lost as well. It seems even Ms. Jarvis herself doesn't know who the sender is. The two women stared at the bouquet for a long while before Lisa suddenly noticed something. There's a card in there. Do you want to take a look? Roxanne nodded. Both of them were quite certain that they would be able to find some clues about the sender's identity on the card. Standing up, Lisa retrieved the card before passing it to Roxanne, who opened the card with doubts. Taking a glance at the card, Roxanne immediately knew who the sender was after seeing the handwriting on the card. Besides, Lucian had also signed off with his name at the bottom of the card. His message comprised just one sentence: let's be honest with each other. Roxanne felt her heart tighten when she read those words. For a moment she thought that it was what Lucian wanted to tell her. Mr. Farwell? Lisa asked in surprise upon seeing the signature on the card. She had her suspicions about Roxanne and Lucian's relationship for a long time, but did not expect them to have already progressed to such a stage. Now that I think about it, though, the two of them do seem rather compatible. A few seconds later, Roxanne returned to her senses and forced a smile while saying, they might have delivered it to the wrong address. Let me call and check. Despite what the other woman said, Lisa could not help but feel doubtful, as she did not think that Lucian was someone who would carelessly send roses to the wrong address. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.